So Spanish interpreters, can you please give your information to everyone in the meeting, please?
Sure. This will be done in Spanish. Buenas tardes, todos, y gracias por haberse presentado a esta reunión virtual para poder acceder y conectarse a la línea en español, donde pueden escuchar la traducción simultánea en español y participar en español también. Por favor, marquen al número 347-966-4114 y el código de la conferencia es el 173-703-058 y el signo numeral. Repito, 347-966-4114 para conectarse a la línea en español, y el código de conferencia es el 173-703-058 y el signo numeral. Gracias. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And Mandarin?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. 各位家长，下午好。请需要国语翻译的，请打专线347-966-4114 347-966-4114 ，ID 密码是516081-826。拨完请按井字，我会将电话号码和密码放在右边的聊天空间里，大家可以看。谢谢 ，Thank you。
Thanks so much. So we're going to get started now. This is the Citywide Council for District 75 Transitions Committee meeting. I am your transition co-chair, Christy Montavon, on the council. We also have some council members present, like our co-president, Amy Ming Tsai. So I just wanted to acknowledge their presence. I'm not sure if anyone else is here from the council. I'm not sure. I'm not seeing anyone else here. So we have a really great presentation today from the wonderful Jackie Tripodi, who happens to work at our very own P37R. And she is really a wealth of information. So I am going to just pass it over to Jackie so that she can get going on what she has to share with us today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. I am Jackie Tripodi. I am the family worker here at PS37R. I also have another hat in which I am the Associate Program Director at the New York State Institute on Disability that serves all 5 boroughs. I don't know if anybody wants me to wait for interpretation, or should I just continue?
You can just continue. It's simultaneous.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. So what I want to start with, if we're going to talk about transition, because I do assist with transition here at PS37, I did send Christy, and I hope to share the information. We have a frequently asked question list that families whose children are preparing to articulate and transition into the adult day world that I shared, and I can put it in the chat as well if that would be helpful for anybody. I could see if I can get it, it's in a Word document, so I could easily get it translated for anybody who's interested. One of the things that we really want to make sure families understand is that when their children are preparing to leave the Department of Education, you need to get all of the information regarding OPWDD eligibility. Make sure that if your child has self-direction, that they have the right type of self-direction budget. So what I want to just touch on today is starting with transition and having your child ready. The year before they're ready to graduate, one of the first things you want to make sure of is that you have updated evaluations. That would be a psychological, psychosocial. That needs to be done within the year, within 3 years, in order, because most agencies are asking for that information. So if your child was up for a triennial when they're 19, 20, 21, these are the times that you want to make sure that you have copies of those reports, as you're going to need to submit them. Most agencies are asking for a psychological or psychosocial done within 3 years. So just keep that in mind time-wise. They are also asking for current medical. A copy of your child's IEP is something that they may be asking for. If there is something, if there is a behavior plan that's associated with your child, that you should also make sure you have a copy of. Most of the time, the school should have some copies of these things, but as a parent, and just, I have to throw the caveat out there, as I'm a parent of a young man with cerebral palsy and multiple disabilities. So I understand having to get all these documents together is time consuming, but it's definitely going to save a lot of aggravation later on going on. So that's the first thing. You're going to want to start looking at programs at least a year within the year of your child graduating. Because at that time, when you're looking at programs, you're looking to see what's appropriate and not appropriate, or what might meet your child's needs. One of the things I'm going to say is, in the adult day world, it is about eligibility, opportunity, and funding. So please keep that in mind for families whose children are graduating, because an agency, when you go, can say, we cannot accommodate your child. It may be the agency that everybody's going to, and your kids' friends are going there, but you want to make sure that it's appropriate for your child. So part of the FAQs, I put some questions that we have that are commonly asked about, when your child is transitioning. And this is general, it can be used in any borough, any of the 5 boroughs. So yeah, does anybody have any questions about anything so far? Because I don't want to just, drone on and put anybody to sleep. Does anybody have any questions or concerns? Okay, I don't see any hands. I don't see anything in the chat. So now you're looking at a program prior to your child graduating. What you want to make sure is that you have OPWDD eligibility. If your child does not have OPWDD eligibility, then that is something that you want. That's if they're going into an adult day program, a day hab. Part of transition could also be employment. There is supported employment, which can be an OPWDD service, but there's also Access VR that can also provide supported employment opportunities and different types of job coaching. So you want to have that conversation with your transition coordinator at the school to see exactly if that your child is going to work, going to college, because there are also college programs. AHRC has several college programs. That it's also, though, a Medicaid waiver program done through OPWDD. So it's a matter of understanding what you're looking for. Continuing education, Staten Island has a continuing education program for later on in the evening that has nothing to do with OPWDD or Access VR. There's also your TCAC, the transition coordinators that are available that you can reach out to. So these are parts of the transition to go into the adult day world. When your child has a one-to-one in school, please know that one-to-ones are very rare in the adult world, unless you have a child that has self-direction. If you have a child that has self-direction services, you can set it up through a community hab, and certain agencies have that collaboration. And this is something that, some individuals need one-to-one for a reason. They need the redirection, they need the consistent facilitation, and through self-direction, you can access, it's a community hab program, and it can be a day hab or a day hab with walls or day hab without walls. Everything is individualized, so know who your child is, what they're looking for. You can go and you can start at one program, and if your child, when they leave, they go to this program, and you find that this isn't exactly what you look for, or your child's not happy, there's always an opportunity to change. Just like when you left school, you most likely are not in the same job that you had when you left school. I know I certainly don't have the same job I had when I left high school. So your children do not have to stay. It's not a stagnant, it's not a forever sentence. And I say sentence that this is, our kids aren't just going there. They're able to go to what their needs are. So keep that in mind when you're looking at programs. Also see the growth that the program might offer, the different opportunities. Some programs have supplemental day habs. Now, a supplemental day hab is going to let you have your child have an extended day. And some programs have that and some programs do not. Transportation, for the most part, most of the agencies are offering transportation, but keeping in mind if your child has an ambulatory concern and that they need a specific type of vehicle to transport them, that agency might not have that. So these are questions to keep in mind. Is there a nurse? Does your child need to have medication during the course of the day? Is there a nurse on staff that can administer medication? Are the staff that's working in the day hab med certified to provide that to provide that medication? These are all questions that you're like, when your kids graduate, everything has been wonderful in school. And now that we're graduating into the big world, these are things to think about. And, if we could just give you that information that you can take with you, if you had questions about something, I'll put my contact information in the chat as well. So, and yes, I see a person's asking if the day hab program has it set up. I do know that there is one on Staten Island that does work with self-direction, and it has to be worked out with the day hab program. So in answer to the question that's in the chat, it can be done. It has been done, but you need to have that coordination with your with your broker, your fiscal intermediary, and the provider to make sure that all of your budget allocations are set up the right way to accommodate that. Because it'll be who's billing. Because in the adult world, everything comes down to billing, which is why I said it's about eligibility, opportunity, and funding. If an agency can't get paid to have your child there, then they're not going to do it. One of the other things too is as your children are entering, the last years of school, keep in mind that agencies do look at attendance. Agencies do not get paid if your child does not go to their program. And if an agency receives an application, I'm being very candid. So I just need to be candid. It is what it is. If an agency sees that your child has an absenteeism where they don't go to school, they're going to wonder if whether or not they're going to come to day program. So if given, Jackie, always attended school, she was there every day, and Joey, showed up periodically, they're going to take Jackie over Joey in their program. And that's just that because they have to depend on the funding. If your child doesn't go, they cannot bill. If they cannot bill, they don't get paid. They cannot keep their program open. It's not like school where they have to continue, if they go, this is the adult day world. An agency depends upon an individual attending program in order to bill for them to go. The supplemental day program and other respite programs, those are different billing mechanisms that you can work out. These are questions that we put out there so that most families don't even realize that you can ask this. An adult day program, they don't provide you lunch. That is something your child is going to have to bring and or pay for. My son goes to an adult day program. He has to bring his lunch every day. If he doesn't have his lunch, we have to pay for his lunch. If they go to outings, we have to pay for it. There are no trips and things like that unless your day program offers it. Ask these questions. Depend whether in Queens there may be a program that lets their children, they take their young adults out, or they do different things that the program has it set up in their budget that they pay for it. I don't know. These are questions to ask, and you'll go in at least having that information and that understanding as far as transition goes. Most students when they leave in June or August, this is to start looking at these programs where they'll set up a trial basis. And honestly, we try to always encourage families to have their child do their trial basis, especially when there's no school. Like, we have a spring break coming up. If you have a child that's graduating this year and there's an opportunity for them to do a trial during this time when they don't have school and they can get acclimated maybe to the idea of this program, that is something that we also encourage you to do. But you have to have that communication with the agency. Every agency has their own intake process and their own screening process. So when you're looking for these programs, have that conversation. Once your child leaves the Department of Education, they're going to go into the adult day world, and it could be, like we said, an employment program, a day program. Your transition coordinator should be working with your graduates to talk about what's out there. Have communication with your care coordinator and the life plan. If we can coordinate all of this, it makes the transition a much easier one for your student. So that's information about transition. Oh, my light goes off, sorry. Does anybody have any questions, concerns, anything that I said that has them curious, or was there any questions that I didn't touch on? Because then I can, Chrissy, go into family support services. Wow, you guys are easy.
Yes, Miss, I had a question, but I need somebody to translate. Disculpe, mi pregunta ¿es verdad que si mi hijo llega a tener un one-to-one, es más difícil que él obtenga un espacio disponible para day hub cuando él tenga 21?
Is it true that if my son has a one-to-one, it's more difficult for him to have a space available for him at day hab?
It is a challenge for a
Sí,
one-to-one in a day hab. Why does your child need a one-to-one? If you're in the day habs, they don't get paid for one-to-ones. I'm being very honest. I'm sorry, I'll wait.
En los day hubs no se les paga. No se les paga para tener atención individualizada. Tengo que ser honesta.
If you have self-directed services, there may be a way to coordinate a one-to-one.
Si tiene servicios autodirigidos, quizá pueda encontrar un modo de tener este servicio individualizado, como usted requiere. ¿Ok?
Muchísimas gracias.
Can we have one of the Spanish interpreters?
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Can we have one of the Spanish interpreters, if they can just give the information to Miss Gabriela, if maybe she has another device that she can call in and she can still listen in, so that she's still following along.
Sure. Thank you. Sure, we will.
And I'm grateful for the question, because if there are questions, we can, I'm sure more than one person has a question, if that's the case. Is there anything anybody else has a question about in regards to day hab, or, when your child leaves, anything along those lines that I can just touch on? Because your transition coordinator should be working with you at the school. And if they're not, then, reach out to your parent coordinator, you reach out to your administration and just have this conversation. If you're 37, then you can reach out to me as well. Elizabeth has a question. No? Okay. So I'm gonna, move on to family support services now. That unless anybody else has any other question, because we wanted to touch on transition. The FAQs are really important, just because sometimes the transition itself is so stressful that you just don't realize what you need to ask. So hopefully that'll be helpful to families as well as administrators. This way they know that they can share this information. Family support services, I'm just going to jump onto that right now, if that's okay. Is that all right, Amy? Christy, is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. And do you have if you or Christy would have a Spanish version of the document you shared?
Okay, I can definitely, we have it in a Word, and we could do the translation and try and send that.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're
Go
very
ahead,
welcome.
you can proceed.
Okay.
Hi, can I ask a question before you move on? It's Leocadia Martinez. And so let me think as to what I'm thinking that it's going to happen. So my grandson is 16, right? And so he's on the spectrum. So when should we be planning? So he's in the 11th grade. So when should we be planning for the transition, which is not a last minute thing, right?
Right.
So is it like in now, or because he's 11th grade, so, and then he goes to 12, and then he goes to question mark. So,
Okay. So he can stay in school till he's 21. That's, you understand that he's entitled to his educational program until the age of 21. Now, if you're opting for him to transition earlier than 21, 11th grade, 12th grade, I have a young man who's graduating this year who can stay till next year, but mom's saying he's done, he's moving on, and he's looking at day programs. So I always encourage, when your children are, whether 11th grade, 18, 19 years old, no later than 19 years old, to start looking at these programs, getting a feel for it, because you could look at a program now and see at 19, and then go back when he's 20, 21, and you'll see if there's been changes. And COVID has changed a lot of programs. So that's one of the things that also has come up, because a lot of programs have changed. So with those changes, we had one program that was able, an individual, and I see the question in the chat, is if they can go part-time to different, like go 3 days a week at one program and 2 days a week at another program. In the past, that one agency was allowing that. Now that agency is no longer allowing to do that. So in answer to that question, when you go to your day hab agency, you will just ask them, can they split their program? Some agencies will say yes, some agencies will say no. So if you're looking now, when you're getting ready for your child to graduate, you'll get that information and then go back the year that they are graduating, and then they tell you something different. So just keep that in mind. So that's why I encourage people to start looking now, get a feel of what the agency is, see what's changed as when your child graduates. So you can, my son started a program. He was going, 5 days a week to this one site. And now since COVID happened, he has to go someplace else. And, this just changed because of COVID. An agency here on Staten Island, you were allowed to, go 2 days a week in a wood shop and then 3 days a week in the greenhouse. Now that agency is saying, no, you have to stay in this one program during this period of time. And when you have your review every 6 months with your life plan, because that's when you're going to also get, because you're going to have goals in day hab to address all of that. And you can talk to them and see, if your child needs to change that program. So it's always going to be fluid. So when would you look? Start looking 19, 20, looking at programs, see the makeup of the program. And then, because you're going to want to start to get your applications in, because a lot of programs may have a wait list. So that's why you start 19, 20 before they graduate. I know I did that when my son graduated. When you do that, have the, get some feedback from parents, follow them on social media, see what they're doing on social media, because that you see what a lot of programs, how they're spending their time. So that could be also another way to do your homework. All right, may I answer the question about day have a part of the week instead of Monday through Friday? It depends on the agency. A lot of agencies, like I said, if your child doesn't, if you only want to go 3 days a week, Joey wants to go 3 days a week and Jackie's willing to go 5 days a week, they may take Jackie over Joey. So just keep that in mind. But you want to do what's in your child's best interest. So you have to do your homework and see which agencies are offering what. You can, again, part-time to one agency. You can join another later time. It depends on your agencies. So Elizabeth, in answer to your question, see which agencies that you're talking to. See if they're willing to do that. If your agency isn't, if the one that you love, say you love agency ABC, And ABC is only taking regular full-time. You're going to have to make the decision what's going to be in your child's best interest, because that's what an agency has to do. An agency is looking to have their program filled all day, every day. That's their ultimate goal, because that's what they depend on that to serve it in continuity. Some agencies are willing to say, there's another agency on Staten Island that says, no, that person can come only 3 days a week. That agency also has where they have self-direction with the one-on-one, where the one-on-one is out 2 days a week that they're doing something with self-direction, ComHab worker, and the other days that they're going to the day hab. Have that communication with your agency. Ask those questions. When you ask them up front, they're going to tell you. Most agencies will tell you. Some will say, oh yeah, well, we'll talk about it later. If they're saying we'll talk about it later, that's like me telling my kid, yeah, maybe we're going to go to Disney World next week. I'm just being candid. That's the gist of all of that. So I hope that answers your question. Does anybody else have any other questions? So as part of OPWDD services, if a person has OPWDD eligibility, they can apply for family support services. Family support services are services provided to individuals who have eligibility and live at home with their family. Those are the only requirements you need for family support services. You must live at home with your family and have OPWDD eligibility. You do not need to have Medicaid waiver to get family support services. The New York State Institute on Disability, they have a contract to provide family support services. Now, the first thing about this contract that I want to share with this group is that in the boroughs of Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, and the Bronx, they can offer free in-home evaluations for individuals that do not have Medicaid and are applying for OPWDD eligibility. I'm going to say it again. If the individual does not have Medicaid, they reside in the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, or Staten Island, they can apply through NYSID to have an evaluation done at no cost to them to get OPWDD eligibility. NYSID's contract does not include Manhattan for evaluations. So that's the first thing I want to say. If a family is trying to get OPWDD eligibility, they need evaluation. And no, OPWDD is not the same as Medicaid waiver. OPWDD is the Office for People with Developmental Disabilities through the state of New York to provide supports and services. What you can get when you have OPWDD eligibility is you will start and then you can apply for Medicaid waiver services. So OPWDD is the conduit for the Medicaid waiver services. OPWDD eligibility just means that your child has been determined to have a developmental disability prior to the onset of age of 22 and can receive services provided through OPWDD. Family support services is one of those services, and that you do not need Medicaid waiver for. You only have to live at home with your family and have OPWDD eligibility. Now, if you don't have OPWDD eligibility and you need an evaluation, just as I said, the New York State Institute on Disability can provide a free in-home evaluation for individuals that live in the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, and Staten Island. So if through your travels and through this council, if you know families that are trying to get somebody to do OPWDD eligibility and they need an evaluation and do not have Medicaid and don't live in Manhattan, they can contact the New York State Institute on Disability. I did send that information also to Christy, and we could put that in. And if anybody needs to know if they have, if you need it translated, please let me know. We can figure that out as well. OPWDD will also encourage you to reach out to a care coordination agent organization, a CCO. Now, there is Care Design, Tri-County Care, ACA. Now, if you have a care manager with any one of those organizations and you're working with them, you will be able to set up and apply for different services through OPWDD. Family support services being one of them. Respite care, community habilitation, day hab, self-direction services. I can put in the chat the OPWDD link so that families can just access it, or I have a document that we can put in, maybe get it translated for what is OPWDD. So if you think you have OPWDD eligibility, your child would have what we call a TABS ID number. Like in school, there is their OSIS number that has their student identification. Through OPWDD, they're given a TABS ID number. And with the TABS ID number and eligibility, you can apply for the services. Family support services in a few of the boroughs, we have crisis intervention through NICED. Whereas if a family is having crisis, they have OPWDD eligibility, the child lives at home, and family is in crisis in trying to help with behaviors, toilet training. It could be a matter of any type of crisis that the family is feeling. In the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Queens, the New York State Institute on Disability has a crisis program that a family could reach out to get some information and develop strategies to help their child. That's also a family support contract service that you do not need Medicaid waiver for. Again, Chrissy, I think I sent you those flyers. I hope I did. If not, I can send it and we can do another.
Yes, I can put everything in the chat.
Okay, so that's the crisis. NICED has evaluations, crisis. We also have our sports and recreation program. The sports and recreation program provides tickets to different venues. You need to have a child that lives at home with their family, have OPWDD eligibility. Now, if you have self-directed services, you must include NICED in the budget for that service. So you would get tickets we send tickets to the Bronx Zoo, we give tickets to the Intrepid. Actually, Intrepid has a really interesting program I just got from Parent to Parent this weekend just for individuals with disabilities. I can put that in the chat too, Chrissy. That was kind of interesting. But NICED will send you tickets to the Bronx Zoo, to the Museum of Natural History, the Wax Museum, the Queens Zoo, Prospect Park Zoo. For individuals that live in the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, and Staten Island, we can provide tickets. We cannot provide tickets to the individuals who reside in Manhattan. It is not part of the contract for the New York State Institute on Disability as their sports and recreation contract. You can send in an application. They send 4 tickets so that the whole family can go. They can get different sets of tickets for, we could give tickets in March for the Museum of Natural History. Come June, they could also get tickets to the New York Aquarium. So it's on there. It's something that a family can do. The point of this program is to send families out in the community together to enjoy a day out. As part of that also, we have a transportation service where we can provide an individual who lives at home with their family. They live in the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, and Staten Island to our recreational programs. So say NICED gives you tickets to the Queens Zoo. You live in the Bronx and you want to go to the Queens Zoo. NICED can provide the transportation to and from door to door at no cost to the family and have up to 4 families. And yes, we can provide transportation for individuals who are in a wheelchair. So if a person cannot transition out of a wheelchair and needs a van, then yes, NICED could provide that transportation as well. Everything is limited to the amount is in the budget. We could provide transportation, would be 4 people that we could send. If your child has self-direction, you need to include the transportation service in the budget as well. So if you're looking to use the transportation or the sports and recreation program through NYSED, you need to make sure if you have self-directed services, you include us in the budget. If you do not include NYSED in the budget, they cannot provide the service. It has to be included. And you need to really think about your budget. If that's going to be something it's going to be worth you spending the money on. A good amount of time, it's not, I'm being very honest. If you're asking, you put $500 in your budget for sports and rec, and NYSED only gives you $125 worth of tickets, that's all you get. And, you know, you have to really think if that's something that you want to do. If you're going to use the service more frequently, it's something to also to think about. Service happens based on availability of funding. So even if you put it in the budget and NYSED no longer has the funds and we've exhausted the funds, we're not going to provide the service. So just keep that in mind. That's something with the transportation as well as sports and rec. As far as the reimbursement program, family support reimbursement has changed considerably since July 1. The state has put out a new administrative memo. With this new administrative memo, there is now different requirements for reimbursement. This includes receiving reimbursement for clothing, reimbursement for furniture, reimbursement for camp, reimbursement for activities. The state has put forth a list of allowable and non-allowable items that can be reimbursed through family support. This list has evolved and is consistently changing. Christy, I sent you the most updated list for February 17th that the state has put out. As of February 17th, they will no longer allow beds, furniture, mattress covers, GPS devices, and there's a whole laundry list of items that they no longer will reimburse for. The items that they can reimburse for, there has been some other activities such as piano lessons, swimming lessons, these types of activities that keep our young adults active in their community and doing things like that. We've been able to do. What they do need is a clinical justification as to why it's necessary and how it's directly related to the individual's disability. Even an air conditioner now is not something that we can do a reimbursement for. The state has been recommending that they go through assistive technology. They will not allow it through family support. I do see a hand up.
Andrea, you can go ahead.
Thank you for acknowledging my hand. Yeah, that's true what she's saying, because I just went through that for my daughter, like for the reimbursement of the clothing, for example. Her care manager / care coordinator told me now the pediatrician has to write a letter saying that the child had a growth spurt or something about she had significant weight gain or something like that, just to write a letter on the young adult's behalf. In my case, it's a young adult, she's 19.
Right.
Just so that they can apply for the reimbursement for the clothes. This is crazy because you stay doing clothing and shoes.
Well, and here's what I'm gonna add to that. When you have to go back, it can't just be a weight gain or a growth spurt, because if your child did not have a developmental disability, the state's attitude is you would have to provide that clothing and those shoes anyway. So what the state is looking for, and this is what I want you to, keep in mind, they want to know why. So you can say that your child had a growth spurt, they outgrew their clothes, but are they taking medication that causes a weight gain or a weight loss? Are they having behavioral issues that are contributing to a weight gain or weight loss, as is it related to your child's disability? So please, when you do something like that, make sure that that's included in the clinical justification from your pediatrician. So your pediatrician can say that your child is wearing, they're wearing down their clothes and, they've gained weight because of medication they're taking, or they're for whatever it is that's related to their disability. And it cannot be a medical issue. So if your child has asthma and they need an air conditioner, well, that's not related to their developmental disability. The state is not allowing that type of reimbursement any longer. So, and your clinical justification can be yes, from your pediatrician, but could also be a clinician that serves your child. If you have a psychologist, a social worker, that's a clinician that works with your child that can document this information. I use my son as an example. I have a son with cerebral palsy. He has gross motor delays. He has an irregular gait. Because of his gross motor delays, when he feeds himself, his clothes become soiled. And then I have to constantly change and wash his clothing. This is a clinical justification clearly related to his developmental disability, and his irregular gait because of his cerebral palsy wears out his sneakers. If you put in an application with a clinical justification for clothing and you submit receipts for shoes, and the shoes is not included in the clinical justification, you're not going to get reimbursed for the shoes.
Right. Okay. So, yeah, because they act like they don't know how to write a letter. Like, I'm like, this is a new requirement. Like, what are you talking about? I'm being told this is how it has to be done. I included what you said, like about the child disability or young adult disability in this case. And it's like, I'm still waiting for the letter. I'm like, they making this real difficult. And I know that funding is tight, and I know that's part of it too. And you're right that they did used to give it for the air conditioner, because I got that once before years ago for my daughter. But there's other ways to get that air conditioner. You get it through the city now.
Right.
So that shouldn't be a problem for nobody either.
Well,
But
that's
a simple thing.
the state's point. The state is trying, they are saying that there are other mechanisms in which to get these supports and services for individuals. So that's on the application.
You're correct.
Mm-hmm. So
You're
and if
you're
anybody has
correct about
questions,
that.
I can put my contact information in the chat as well. NYSED serves for reimbursement all 5 boroughs. So within the 5 boroughs, if anybody has any questions, you can gladly reach out, and I will be very honest with my answer, because the worst thing in the world is going back and forth and being bounced around. The suggestion is to email applications and information so that it can be reviewed and we can let you know ahead of time.
Okay, I think I'm gonna need your information, because I'm being bounced around right now.
I'm gonna put it in the chat, and then I'm
And
happy
if you
to
can
answer
mention,
any.
I know it's happening to a lot of other parents. They probably don't even understand this change.
Right,
'Cause
and
this is new to me too.
this is why Chrissy asked that we address this today. So we're helping to
Thank
do
you,
that.
Chrissy.
Erin, you had a question?
Hi, yes, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Hi. So I about the clothing reimbursement, I just my son falls a lot. He's very clumsy, he doesn't watch where he's going. So like he's always putting holes in pants and stuff like that. Is that a justification for the clothing reimbursement?
Because does he get OT in school or
Yes.
PT in school?
Yes.
So that could be, even one of those clinicians can indicate about his the gross motor. And
Okay.
he has those gross motor delays, frequent falls as a result of those gross motor delays as they're related to his developmental disability, as long as it's documented. And when I said a clinician, it's a clinician. It doesn't have to be the pediatrician or the doctor. It could be a physical therapist, like my son's physical therapist or my son's occupational therapist can document. They have to include their license, ID number, and it must be on letterhead. Don't just send an email. Don't just send a script, because I'm going to tell you right now, a script is not going to be accepted. It will not. It needs to be, because what happens is an agency has to submit the documentation and a tracker to the state, and the state is asking for this information. If this information is not part of the packet, then a family, they're not going to get reimbursed. And the other thing too, to keep in mind, Andrea and everybody, is that when you submit the packet, make sure that your child's life plan is updated to include that information. And that section
Oh my
5 of the life plan includes family support services and an agency. It doesn't have to be NYSEG. It could be CUSAC, it could be HACCP, it could be YAI, but it has to be in the life plan. So in the life plan, and the best part is in the about me part in the life plan, put, I say, Joey, I like to feed myself. When I feed myself, my clothes get messy. When I walk, I wear out my sneakers. And that's part of the life plan explanation. It matches, literally, it's nice if it mirrors the clinical justification, because that gives the meat with the potatoes to put the information in. So just keep that in mind. Andrew, you had another question?
Yeah, I had put my hand down and raised it back only because, did you talk about like family outings, like when they used to give the tickets to take the child out? Did you talk about that already? Because I came on late.
Yes, I did. I did mention that we did have the tickets where a family, we could send tickets to a family of 4.
I just wanted to know if they still did that. That's all it
Yes,
was.
yes, they do. It's the new form. I also sent that to Christy. That could be in the chat as well.
I just put it in the chat again.
Great, Christy. And
Okay,
that's
thank you.
actually, that was just recently updated the end of February to have that
Okay.
information. So we could do that. The same thing, even with the transportation. Just keep in mind when you're talking about self-direction, if you have it, you need to include that program in the budget. If it's
Okay.
not
Thank
in the
you.
budget, it's not going to happen.
Thank you. That's clear. Everything you said is clear. Thank you.
Okay. So the family reimbursement, you need to submit the completed application. It's 3 pages. On the application, you need to indicate whether or not other avenues were sought. That's what we were talking about earlier. Did you try to find out if this was going to, could you get this anywhere else? Did you try Medicaid? Did you do that? Now, I'll give an example. If a family had for a hearing aid, family tried to obtain reimbursement for a hearing aid. They tried to go to Medicaid. They received a Medicaid denial. Because they received the denial from Medicaid, it was able to be processed through family support because there was a clinical justification. It was part of the life plan. There was a Medicaid denial, and we were able, and it was for a family that lived in Brooklyn, to put that application through. So if you have all your ducks in a row, it's easy to get these services to be processed. If you do not submit all of the right documents, it's not going to be accepted. So families, and if you have questions, ask, whether it be me or you contact the family support coordinators. The family support coordinators, there is one for every borough. For Manhattan, it's Janet Davis. For Queens, it is Robin Mooney. For the Bronx, it is Crystal Manby. For Brooklyn, it is Angela Blades. For Staten Island, it is Vilma Gilling. I can put that, I could share that information as well, so that this way families can get that, they can contact. And I'm pretty sure I have their contact information for families to ask. So I can send that also to you, Christy. I don't have it available to me right now. And if there's any, we could do that. When your reimbursement goes, it could take 8 to 12 weeks to process a reimbursement application. This is something families can please keep in mind. Just because you submit it doesn't mean it happens in 3 days. It can take 8 to 12 weeks because once the application is received, it goes to committee for a committee to review. And this is mandated by OPWDD that this has to be done. It gets submitted to the OPWDD Family Support Coordinator, which is the ladies I just mentioned. And then it gets back to the agency to submit a check. So it is a process. One of the other things that comes up is that sometimes families cannot afford to pay for a certain thing. And I'll use horseback riding. We've been able to reimburse for horseback riding. Families cannot afford to pay horseback riding or camp, and they need the agency to pay for it up front. In order for an agency to pay for it up front, you need to provide information as to why you cannot pay for it. So horseback riding, it could be that, if a family doesn't have the financial means, an agency may ask for income information if you're asking them to pay for it. Usually when it's like horseback riding or swimming lessons, they're going to ask. I could tell you NYSEG, we're going to ask why you can't pay for that up front. Because those are something, usually it's like $500-600. That's something that an agency to lay that money out without having a justification. And that's part of the guidelines through OPWDD, why you can't, you need a letter, why you can't afford it, what's going to happen, what is your income? So that may happen. But if it's for camp, and I'll use this as an example, a lot of families in Brooklyn, they go to a camp and they go for the summer. An agency can pay 14 days for overnight camp. So say you have a family who goes to camp from June 28th to August 31st, right? August 31st, it could be August 31st, whatever. And it's $8,000 for camp. An agency can pay 14 days. So they're going to break up how much, if it's $8,000, they're going to divide it by the amount of days that their child's away, whatever it is per day, and pay 14 days. If it is a day camp and they go day camp June 28th to August 31st, day camp, and the day camp is $3,000, NYSEG can pay the full $3,000. Keep that in mind because it is a day camp. If it is an overnight camp, the maximum we can pay ever will be $3,000. But if the 14 days is less than the $3,000, we're going to have to pay the less because we can only pay for the 14 days. No, it is not on the forms. That's why I am telling you. Agency contracts are that they can pay for 14 days overnight camp. I do have a procedures list that I sent to Christy that she's going to put out. That information is in that because we want to make sure we get that information out. As I said, this has been changing and evolving since July of 2022. The camp has been 14 days forever and a day, no more than 14 days for overnight. If your 14 days overnight is like $3,000, we'll be able to pay the $3,000. And we could pay the camp because we know that that's an excessive cost without us asking for, family income or anything like that. And camp does not need a clinical justification. All it needs is a justification. Camp reimbursement is different because camp is a recreational respite activity that a family uses. So we can pay with just a regular justification saying, Joey likes to go to camp to spend time with his peers. He enjoys swimming outdoors, and it gives him an opportunity to be out in the community, whatever it is. If your child goes to a camp that bills for waiver respite, and AHRC is one of those camps, and that's where my son went. He went to AHRC Camp Ann. They billed waiver respite, and they sent me a bill of $900 to pay for his camp. In the past, we have been able to reimburse for that. We can no longer do that. Because it is a waiver respite camp, we cannot pay the balance. That is the family's responsibility. This is new. This is a big deal. This impacts a lot of families whose children go to a camp that's waiver respite. If your child goes to a camp that does not bill for waiver respite, what they need to do to get reimbursed that $3,000 is submit an application. They need to submit the life plan. That should be part of the information. They need to submit a justification letter that says why, Joey goes to camp. They need the Department of Health certificate that allows the site to operate as a camp, whether it be an overnight camp or day camp. Without the New York State certificate, an individual cannot be reimbursed for that camp. We cannot reimburse for camps that are out of state. Families used to go to Pennsylvania, Connecticut. They still can, but we cannot pay for it. We cannot reimburse for a camp that is out of the state. We cannot reimburse for a camp that does not have a Department of Health certificate. The other thing that NYSED is asking for is a letter of attestation from the camp that says that they do not bill for waiver respite. Because if the state comes back to us and says they bill for waiver respite, why did you pay it? If I don't have that letter of attestation, the agency will get cited. So again, I have that as part of that description of what's necessary and whatever, then yes, we would be able to do the camp. I see some information. Hippotherapy is the horseback riding, but keep in mind, therapy, OT, PT, anything like that cannot be reimbursed through family support services. It has to go through Medicaid. The state will not allow it. What else? Was there another question I have? I'm trying to think if there was anything else that I missed. I had reimbursement, sports and rec, transportation, the evaluations, and then we spoke about transition and moving on. I don't know if there was anything else anybody had any questions about. That pretty much sums up a lot of it. My contact information is in the chat through NYSED. And I'm happy to share any information that anybody has. Does anybody have any other questions? And I really appreciate the time, because the more people know, the easier it is to get the word out. You guys are an easy group. Go ahead, Lisa. Claudia, go ahead. Lisa?
Hi, Jack.
Hi, Lisa.
How are you?
Okay.
Just a quick question, whether it's relevant or not. Can you just touch on the SSI? You're talking about the process of when they graduate.
Okay.
Like to start it at 19. Like for SSI, you start that at 18 years old?
At 18. When your child turns 18, it is a good idea to go and apply for a supplemental security income, which is SSI. What happens with the SSI is your child, you'll have to bring some paperwork to the Social Security office and your child. I took Joseph on his 18th birthday and we went and applied for SSI for him. With SSI, he was then, because now he's a young adult, he can, he's to support himself, he'll get an income, and then his SSI would then transfer to where it's not necessarily Medicaid waiver, he can be eligible to get Medicaid through SSI. Although some families whose children live at home at 18 still are covered under their insurance, the Medicaid becomes a secondary. So you apply for SSI. Now, when I went with my son, one of the things that we brought to the table was that my son was going to start paying rent. So we made sure that SSI was aware that Joseph was paying rent when he lived at home with me. He had to contribute to the electricity, the Wi-Fi, the internet, the heat, and all of that. And then part of SSI, you can apply to get food stamps, the SNAP program, supplemental food program that they have, so that you can do, it's called SNAP now, so that you can go food shopping. Also at 18, one of the things I also encourage families to do, if you do not already, get a non-driver's, if your child drives, that's wonderful, but a non-driver's ID, get a state identification for them. When your children, if you have a male young man, he must register for selected services. This can be also done through the Department of Education, and they help me with that. Even if they have a disability, yes, they must register for selected services at 18 years old. Also at 18 years old, they can register to vote. If the person does not have legal guardianship at the time, or whatever the case might be, if you have a young person who votes, they want to go and vote, they are entitled to go vote. It is their right. My son is a registered voter and has voted in every election. So this is something to keep in mind as your children get older, that they can do. But for SSI benefits, it's an income. You do it on their 18th birthday. They'll process the paperwork. They're going to ask you for evaluations. They're going to ask you for medicals. They're going to ask, it depends on who your intake person is at Social Security. And what'll happen is by the time you do the process, if they're going to get any kind of payment, they'll have to have their own bank account. My son has his own bank account. And this is for SSI. Some families, their children get SSD, which is part of if the family member has a disability or something. And then there's a Medicaid bind, that's a whole entitlements and benefits conversation that you might want to have somebody from a CCO come in and talk about, because I can honestly tell you, I'm not as knowledgeable as I'd like to be on it, but there is information about that as well. I hope that answers your question, Lisa.
Yes, it does. Thank you, Jackie.
Does anybody else have any other questions? Is there anything else that I can try to enlighten anybody on and, try and have a positive thing about things? Gabriella?
Yes, Jackie, but the problem is my first language is Spanish. Solamente me quiero quitar la duda. Es verdad que nuestros hijos revisan el IP 3 años antes de que ellos vayan a pasar a un day hub. O sea,
Is it true that they review, un momentito, por favor. Is it true that they review the IEP 3 years before they progress over to a day hub? Puede seguir.
When in the Department of Education, you'll have a triennial. You need to find out when your last triennial was for your child. Sometimes the triennial falls just when a child is graduating, might fall 2 years before the child is graduating. So it's important to check with your child's school, find out when their last triennial was. Obviously, it's something that is done every 3 years. So if you had a triennial when your child was 18 and they're getting ready to graduate, what you could do is you can see if the psychologist can just review the psychological that's on file and perhaps do an addendum if there has been no changes in your child's progress, because that addendum would then be accepted by the day hab. Once your child goes into an adult day program, they don't go for evaluations. There are no evaluations unless there are changes for something that you may seek out. And that would be done through like a Medicaid waiver program. When my son moved into a residential group home, we did need to do a new evaluation for him so that we can then move him in, because he needed an updated evaluation. That was and he was already in a day program, but because we were changing something with his programs and services, we needed to submit a new psychological and a psychosocial for him when there was a change. If your child is going into a day program from the school, if there was a triennial done within, it's 3 years, a triennial is done, should be done every 3 years. If it's not done every 3 years, sometimes the school doesn't do a full evaluation because it's not necessary if there are no changes in your child's academics and what their needs or supports are. This is something to have a conversation with your school psychologist and just see when was their last evaluation. Do I need to do a new one, especially if they're graduating, and just to have something updated? I hope that answers your question.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Did anybody else have anything else that I can help elaborate on? If there was Christy, anybody else have any questions about anything?
I have a question. So if a parent is having a child who is, I know a parent right now whose child is graduating and is actually going to post-secondary school, college, and mom is trying to figure out like what this will look like financially holding the child while the child either is living at home and going to school, which the school is close by, or having a child living on campus, but still be financially supported by the parents and being under the parents and the students like 18. So can you kind of share a little bit of like what that dynamic looks like if a student who's going to college and, still dependent on the parents, but also living independently, but not, not owning their own apartment or renting an apartment, but like living on campus.
Right, so they'd be dorming. I mean, I can only, if the child has it first, if we're talking about a child graduating who has a developmental disability, one of the first things I also, if it hasn't been done, is get in touch with the developmental disabilities office of the college to make sure that any supports academically are necessary that are in place. Because the IEP, although it's a school document, there are provisions through 504 Rehabilitation Act that can be taken care of through the college. Financially, if the individual, he gets SSI benefits, those funds, just because he's away at college, he still lives at home with family because that's his residence. He's dorming. So when you dorm, your income shouldn't change for your SSI if that's what you're asking for. If they've taken out student loans and he has to pay them back, it's all in the grand scheme of what the family's financial situation is. Family support, just so that I understand, family support, there wouldn't be reimbursement for his academics through, just so that I'm clear on that, because I don't know if that's where you're going with this, but family support cannot pay for any kind of school, college classes, can't pay for any college books or anything like that. That's not something that the family can get some supports on, if that's what you're looking for. Is that part of what you're looking?
Well, no, actually was more of like if the student needs accessible technology in order to be in the lecture hall or in the class, or like an escort from one building to another on campus to go to class, like supportive.
Right, so those kinds of supports that, now, if, let's just say for the sake of argument, this individual has OPWDD eligibility, has self-directed services, and has where you could have a mentor. Most colleges, actually, I know CSI has a program that has college that can have a mentor accompany the individual, but through self-direction, there may be where a community health worker, where if they have a shadow in the college, if that's what they need, but talk to the developmental disabilities office in the college to see what supports that they can provide, because there are quite a few. I hope that answers your question.
And does it make a difference if the student is dormed or going to college like out of New York City, New York State, sorry? Like
no, well, if they have
Jersey?
self-direction services, service for self-direction, any kind of state service has to be provided within New York State. Just so ComHab or anything like that, it's not going to transfer over to Pennsylvania. If they go to, SUNY or out in Stony Brook or something, that might be something that a family could coordinate through but I would talk to a broker and a fiscal intermediary about those supports. But honestly, talk to the college campus, the disabilities office, because I know when my daughter went away to college, she spoke to the developmental disabilities office and they were able to accommodate the needs that she had, which was obviously very different than my son. But I would definitely encourage that to do that. If you're staying within the state of New York, if they're dorming in New York State, that might be something that you could check with self-direction. That sounds like a
No, her son is deciding to go to Fordham University, and their response was reaching out to developmental disabilities. Like there was lack of information, so just curious.
You could try, you know who else you could try? You could try that city. I want to say vested, but it's not vested anymore. Who is it? It's
CUNY?
no. It's Access VR. Access VR. Yeah, contact Access VR for that. Access VR would be the great contact for that one.
Thank you so much. And I think Miss Patricia has her hand up.
Oh, okay.
I was just going to echo some of what you're saying because my daughter is on the spectrum. and has successfully achieved an associate's degree and a BA from Lehman. I
That's
was going
great.
to concur and basically say, what I've noticed at most of the colleges that she's attended is that they try to mirror the supports that are on the last IEP. And they will definitely try to work with you for technology. And, as much as they can do, they will definitely do. So I agree with you wholeheartedly to
Good.
reach out. And self-direction would be an excellent way to support other things that they can't do.
Right. Thank you.
So I'm your amen committee.
Thank you. It's nice to know you give information that's helpful. Thank you. I'm glad.
I just wanted to add to the person before about college. There was an excellent presentation on college. I don't know if you have access that information with you. I don't have it because I'm outside, but I could probably send it to you. But it was from Access, and it was an excellent information about the different colleges, the different programs that they have. So, and she might want to also contact, include New York. Is that what it is?
Include
They
NYC.
also, yes. So just wanted to share that. But when I get my notes, I could probably email it to you. And let's see if that helps out too.
Okay.
All right.
So, I mean, this was a lot of information. I really appreciate the time and opportunity to share it. Let's go back to transition. When you're transitioning, those frequently asked questions, if anybody has any other thoughts or ideas, we always welcome them. Your communication with your transition coordinator is key. When you're looking for family support services, your family support coordinator in each borough is available. NYSID, as I said, you can always reach me. I'm more than happy to help with that, through the school or even through the NYSID contact phone information. I'm happy to help however I can. Again, thank you for the opportunity to share the information and answer questions if anybody doesn't have anything else. Somebody had a question in the chat, Miss Powell Davis.
Yes, I have a question regarding camp. I came in a little late in the meeting and I overheard when you spoke regarding what would be paid for the camp. What if, let's say, a child goes to regular day camp, let's say for a month, but then up in the Adirondacks, they wanted to do a 1 week overnight camp. Will both be paid for?
Yeah, as long as it doesn't exceed the $3,000. So say you put an application in July that they go to day camp and it's $2,000 for the month of July. And then in August, they're going away for a week and that's $1,500. The max you would receive is the $1,000. Keep in mind that $3,000 cap is for the full fiscal year. The fiscal year starts July 1st and it ends on June 30th. So we can pay if they go to the whole, like June 28th to July 31st, they go to day camp and it's $2,000, but then they go a week to the Adirondacks for, the 5 days and it's $1,500. We could pay the $1,000 because they can't max out beyond 3,000. And you have to provide the Department of Health certificates and letter of attestations. Just keep that in mind as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I think we are good. Thank you, Jacqueline. I don't know if our chair, Christy.
I'm here,
Okay.
yeah. Thank you so much, Jackie. Thank you for all of this information. I've shared everything out in the chat. And if you want to get some of that stuff translated and email it to the council, we'll be happy to disseminate it to our council mailing list as well. And again, thank you so much. We really appreciate all of this needed information.
I'm so glad for the opportunity, really, Christy. Thank you. And, I hope everybody has a great day.
Thanks so much.
you.
Take care, everyone. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for all this wonderful information. Thank you.
Thank you, interpreters. You can leave the room. You're dismissed.
Adiós.
Adios.
Thank
Bye,
you,
thank you.
Jackie. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Christy.
Thank you.
Signing off.
Bye, Paola.